When I first started my producer name, I actually went through a couple of aliases, which was like Aeon and some other stuff, and I eventually ended up on Alchemy. When I came upon my name as an alias, I wasn't really aware of how much I would actually realize like the actual namesake itself, which is what today's video is about. You can turn any sound into any kind of sound. And to prove that to you, I'm going to walk you through a couple of steps that I've had, which is building upon the last video that I did, which was the 1 hour challenge. And somehow, some way, I ended up taking a bunch of random stuff and we ended up with getting a sound out of, I'll tell you in a second, but something that ended up sounding kind of like this. Now, the thing is that I believe that you can turn any sound into any kind of sound, audio alchemy, if you will, no pun intended. The cool thing about understanding sound is that there are certain rules that our ears are kind of bound by, or I guess physically sound waves are bound by, that helps shape these postulates of how to turn something into anything. So take, for example, something like a sine wave. Now, if I wanted let me just grab something like FM4. If I wanted this to become something more complex, something that has more sounds or like more rich or something, what would I need to do in order to make this into, a fully fledged sound? Because right now, as you can see, it's actually more than, that's interesting, but it's for the most part just a single harmonic, right? But if we apply certain things like FM, if we apply even simple things like white noise, well, now we've got a lot of stuff to work with. If I didn't have the saw wave and all I had was noise, how would I turn this into something as simple as a saw wave? And if you think about it, it actually makes a lot of sense, because what we can do is focus on a single harmonic here, kind of like so. And right now we don't really have anything. So let me give this a little bit of distortion. But look, you can start to see that this is pulling out something here. So if I duplicate this several times and maybe add something like a clipper just for protection for us, and we pull this up, well, now take a listen. You heard it though, right? So maybe we actually don't need that many, maybe just a couple, but check this out. And so because of that, these are the two extremes of having something from very simple to more complex. And you say, Alchemy, well, what if I wanted to, do the opposite, where we make something from a single harmonic, for the most part, just bear with me, into something that is more complex? Well, we have lots of different tools to help us do that. Take, for example, a ring modulator. If I do something as simple as change this from a sine oscillator to low pass noise, then with this effect, what I can do is just turn this up all the way, and now listen. I think we somehow broke this because of the because we created like just an infinite amount of intermodular distortion or something. So let me back up and restart and do this quickly, but check this out. Let's try that again. There we go. And let's grab that ring mod and go like this. And now if we take a look at what we have here, well, now we're back at white noise again, just from a single harmonic. And so what this tells me is that with the power of combining stuff, for example, like a very fast decay to something that could be long and drawn out with lots of release and everything in between, this means that we can turn any sound into any kind of sound. Where you're like, oh, well, what if I want this to be a chord? Okay, well, something else that we can kind of consider is I can utilize these peaks and these notches and stuff to create something like that. So if I go F3 to, I don't know, maybe C4, kind of like so, and then we can do maybe D sharp, kind of like this. And we make a few of these. maybe on the last one, we cut this off. Well, now look, we've created something that is very reminiscent of sounding like it actually has some kind of tone. And if we were to take that on the outside and apply that into a sampler of some sort and set the root note to F, then we might have something that's playable. And this applies to drums as well. And then I'm not going to go into that specifically in this video, but just as a forelearn, I just put out a new course on my website called how to make drums, or what is it? Drum masterclass from Bitwig, which basically goes through the concept of synthesizing drums in a conventional way to how to turn any sound into a drum. Which, if you're advanced and you understand how to shape stuff or whatever, then that kind of already leads into that. But what this tells us, because any sound can become any kind of sound, we can kind of, reverse this and go into like this crazy, how do you say, like loophole of turning anything into anything. And the reason why I wanted to make this video isn't because I was like, oh, look at how it came into my name or whatever, but because it really should unlock a lot of doors when it comes into how to make synthesized sounds, or like how to get more variety out of what you're already doing, or even just getting some variation and not trying to abide by formulas that have typically like maybe held you back. If you have a synthesizer that you're like, oh, I need phase plant, or I need this or whatever, like there are some effect tools that you will need. But for the most part, if you are willing to let go of trying to capture a specific sound and instead you're going for something that's a little bit more general. So for example, as opposed to being like, I need to have this saw wave, super crazy, what is that? Pitch map, vocoded super bass or whatever. And instead you're like, yo, I'm just going to try to make a fat bass. That gives you a lot more options to work with and helps you get out of the specificity of, or rather the specifics of trying to like recapture a sound, because for some reason, if you're a nerd like I am, that stuff just matters so much. So really, you don't need all that stuff though, right? I mean, if I were to very quickly, I'm going to show you just kind of a sneak peek. Go into something like a Pro Q. We're also going to need a tool for this, because I'm going to want to put this in mono. Excuse me. Wow, death. And we have something that's kind of like this. And let's say we have something that starts off with segments, and we do something kind of like this, to where I am going to pull this here. You might already know what I'm getting ready to do, but we can grab the pitch here and make this really fast, kind of like a quarter note, and just go from there, and then maybe make this a little bit more dramatic. Well, check this out. What is that? Well, if we maybe adjust this just a little bit and make this a little bit faster, so kind of just work with this in this way. Well, what did I just do? What does that sound like to you? We just made a kick, right? And this isn't the best kick, and I would talk about maybe in my masterclass of how to shape this into something that's actually going to be useful. But what did we do here? We went from, just a sine wave to something else, and we've essentially only designed what? A single harmonic in white noise. But having that understanding is what is going to kind of unlock all these doors for you and really start to make sense, and honestly like get you from being someone that knows a few formulas of certain sounds or whatever to somebody that is able to kind of like hone in and master being able to make anything out of anything. And that's my ultimate goal for not only myself but also for anybody that I teach, including you all, or how to just get out of your own head when it comes into sound design and whatnot. So as an example, something that I did on this track was I actually resampled everything. So I have this effect layer on here that I sent through a delay and a filter and a fuse compressor, and I ended up getting this sound. Hold on one second. Let me turn all this stuff off. Group. Just some random stuff. Now, I will say that I stretched the audio out and kind of moved everything else kind of out, so that's why that sounds like that. But what I ended up doing was adding some more effects to this. We ended up getting some sounds kind of like this. And what's kind of happening right there is we're starting to get some kind of low end stuff and something that sounds a little bit more like it has a pronounced sound. And then if we take that and do the same thing, which as you can see here, I'm adding in a fundamental. Then we do the same thing here. Well, what did I just do? Well, I just made a bass out of all this random stuff. And that's what ended up becoming this right here, which is this guy. Oh, not this guy, sorry. This guy. And so from pushing a single harmonic up and from pushing out that fundamental, we actually have this sound now, which is just this dude. Sorry, not that guy. Which is this guy. And then if you send that through a bunch of other stuff, for example, like some processing kind of like so, then you end up getting and so basically, long story short, what I did was I resampled this entire song, sent it through a bunch of effects, and then started to be like, oh, well, I want it to become whatever, and sent that and made it a neurobass out of it. And if you haven't seen it, I have a short, or actually it was from a live stream, but I have a short where I turn a hi-hat into a neurobass. And again, this isn't saying, look at me, look at how cool I am, but it's understanding like, hey, if you have this depth of knowledge or you kind of have this scope about understanding that anything can become anything, then suddenly it's not, oh, this sound sucks anymore. And your sample library or anything that you get kind of has this approach of being able to turn trash to treasure, if you will. That's something that Corey says. I'm stealing that from her totally. So in any case, I just wanted to do this demonstration for you to, one, help you kind of like maybe get out of like, oh, I need to have serum, I need to have current, and, you know, be able to synth XYZ, and more so put your focus into the intention behind discovering things and realize that there are these rules, like I said from before, or these certain guidelines and principles that help really define a sound into what it is. And so my challenge to you is to stop watching your Skrillex tutorials, stop watching these videos that are like how to sound like this person, because you're missing the point. And I know that I have no shade towards any other YouTubers and stuff, but they're trying to sell you on this idea about how to sound like somebody else. Whereas if you take this journey with me, or with anybody else that advocates this stuff, you're going to find a lot of unique stuff that will help really set yourself as apart from what everyone else is doing. And the cool thing about this is that if you do this, you have no choice but to like be raw about it. You know what I mean? It is literally you against your own understanding of your sound design. And I value that. And I think that you should too, because you're going to start getting stuff that you never even thought was possible, provided that you have a couple of guidelines, which I would say, one, make sure you have a clipper or limiter at the end of your chain. And two, if you're making bass, then maybe mono everything around 100. But after that, it's kind of fair game. So yeah, thanks so much. Check out that Bitwig masterclass if you're interested, or you can get my racks and all that, you know, the crazy filtering and stuff on my website at alchemy.com. I've got a special right now for the month of September where I'm offering hour lessons for $30. So that's as cheap as it's ever been, all the way until the end of September again. Or just like the video and share it and let me know your thoughts if you've got any cool tricks that you like to do of doing audio alchemy. But thanks everybody. Hopefully that was helpful, and feel free to ask me any questions if you have any, either here or in the Discord. Thanks. I will catch you in the next one.